What is up? What is up, guys? Got a couple people tagging along for the House of Dragon series finale, like episode, and kind of going over the season as a whole. I've got Brandi over here. She's with me during this week, tagging along, and I also have Alex here. But I can go ahead and do like a brief synopsis of Brandi. Like Brandi hadn't ever watched Game of Thrones until like this show was announced, knowing I was going to watch it, and she had never seen the original Game of Thrones. So like right before this season started, we actually went through and watched all the Game of Thrones, the original, like one by one with her and stuff. So that's like the only kind of thing that she had with Game of Thrones is actually going and watching the original series from front to start as fast as we could before the season started. But Alex, man, first time on here. Like, if you want to go ahead and give like, what kind of history you have with Game of Thrones as far as like before this season started.
So I got into Game of Thrones right before the last season that aired in 2019, and the year of 2018, me, my family, a couple of my friends, we all binged the entire series leading up, and then eventually the next season came out, and I've just heard so many good things, and I immediately fell in love with the series. I'm a big fan of it. I love the world, all the different factions, and the fantastical elements of it, and I was really curious about this show, and a lot of people, I would say, it's weird when it comes to the last two seasons of the original Game of Thrones, how there's some like a little sour taste in people's mouths about it. But for me, I still enjoyed it. I do think there's a little bumps in the road, but this show right here is probably one of the best seasons of Game of Thrones, in my opinion. And this last episode, I will say, was very very good, and I've just loved this show overall a lot. Justin, what do you think?
I've always been a person that's like a realist. I knew going in to say like in the original Game of Thrones, the first 6 seasons, some of the best television, if not the best television you'll ever watch. The only gripe and complaint by most people, nobody that was into the show really complained until season 8. I mean, 7 and 8 came about. But I also knew because of the word that was getting out and everything else that like they were trying to tie this up, they were having to do it a little quicker and all that stuff, that like they were going to have things happen with the last 2 seasons that was going to feel rushed. So I knew that going in. So like when I watched the episodes, like I still enjoyed the story they told and still enjoyed the episodes. But I already had myself knowing that like, yo, this is going to be fast. This is going to be faster than normal. This isn't going to be the same. So like it didn't hit me as hard as some other people. I guess they just still figured, even though they were hearing the news about not as many episodes and everything else, that like, oh, we're still going to get the same old Game of Thrones. And we still got that. Like if you break each episode down, like it still felt like Game of Thrones, but like if you put it all together in seasons, yeah, it moved way faster. And one of the things that was great about the Game of Thrones, spoiler alert if you haven't watched the original, is that like you had a character like Hodor show up at the very beginning of the series, and then you had to go 4 or 5 seasons deep, and then you found out why he says Hodor all the time and why his name was Hodor and why they called him that and everything else. Like that was a really long setup. If you watched the first season, you would just be like, well, who's this simple guy that just walked around saying Hodor all the time? You never would figure that out. You had to go 4 or 5 seasons into it to find that out, which is a really big payoff. And that's the one thing they were missing the last 2 episodes of the original series. I never hated it, but because I kind of understood it from the beginning, like what was going to happen. Like I knew things were going to move at a breakneck speed, way faster than it normally was, because you were getting like 4 to 5 episodes less than you normally would get in a season and everything else. So like, and I knew that, and you knew things were going to change a little bit because they were actually going past the written material, because George R.R. Martin still hasn't even written the book, written the books. In the books, Jon Snow's still dead, at that point, to be honest with you. So like, all that stuff. So like, he hasn't even like put it out there that Jon Snow is going to survive. So they got past where the books was. So I understood it and I got it, but like, and it still doesn't ruin the Game of Thrones. It's still my favorite show that's ever played on anything, to be honest with you, period. My favorite show of all time. I know some people throw like the Breaking Bad. I've heard people say The Wire. I've heard a different bunch of different things out there as far as their favorite episodic television And this one right here, still Game of Thrones, the original one, still my number one. But this was a great. The House of Dragons is a great start first season, and I actually think maybe the first season is as good or better than the original Game of Thrones' first season.
I would agree. I think this season. I mean, granted, they have a lot more money in this scenario, and it also was a little different because the narrative just focused on just a couple of characters compared to the series Game of Thrones, where there were so many characters they had to follow, and it kind of feels a lot more confined. Not to say what happened in the original Game of Thrones didn't work. I thought that was completely confined throughout the first 6 seasons, and I think also a big part of the problem that happened with the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, the original one, was the fact that George R. R. Martin was not involved with the last 2 seasons, and Benioff and Weiss wanted to rush it for Star Wars. That was one of the problems that they ran into, and they were just kind of getting a little too ambitious and excited for more projects, but didn't have the patience to finish up what they were already doing. But I think for this show specifically, it was just I felt like it was just a lot more human than the actual Game of Thrones. And I loved the original Game of Thrones, and I love all those characters. But this one really showcased the gray area of written characters, how they could break stereotypes on how you think certain characters are going to act. You think Damon's a complete asshole, just a reckless murder machine that that has his own idea on justice, but as you go along, he kind of has these soft moments where you're like, okay, this guy does have this way of pulling himself back. And then you get to Alicent, Rhaenyra, and all those people. We'll get into it a little bit later, but I just thought it was just so fascinating how they're able to create these characters to where they were just so grounded and more, it just, the series felt very much lived in, and it almost felt like this it felt like a real, a reality show, a drama that was set in this big house where everyone was living in it and all this shit was happening.
No, yeah, I totally get it, because the original Game of Thrones went all over the place because we had all the different houses, we had all the different places that we saw, which was really cool, right? But in this series, in this series though, you're dealing with one family. This gets torn apart, and it's focused on a couple of key areas, like Dragonstone and the Red Keep and King's Landing and stuff like that, where the king sits and everything. So I actually don't mind it. I think it's actually I actually love the fact that they actually picked this to go with as far as another series to follow when it comes to the Game of Thrones, because I think being a little different made it even better to me. You know what I'm saying? Because we wasn't jumping back and forth and all this. We were stuck in these places. We get to live in it a little bit longer. You get to get used to them a little bit longer. It's cool to see the Red Keep and King's Landing and even Dragonstone for that matter. And these it's newer, you know what I'm saying? It's not as old, but you can tell a little bit of a difference. It looks a little shinier than what it did in the original Game of Thrones, but it's supposed to, But I really enjoyed that and everything. But yeah, man, we'll just go over some key elements right here. Episode breakdown. Then at the very end, we'll kind of go over the whole season review. One of the things that I wanted to focus on here is because obviously in the show, our little guy Luke here, he doesn't, he's got his time is limited. I do like the fact that they gave Rhaenyra here and Luke a little bit of time together, in one of the episodes before this, and especially in this episode as well, where they get to talk a little bit more about things, and she's trying to teach him things and stuff, and he thinks she's perfect, and she's like, I'm far from it, and all this. I love these interactions that they gave us, because it made what happens later on in the episode even more important and even more gut wrenching to some people, because some people love this little, this kid. He doesn't want all the responsibilities. He's kind of like a Jon Snow kind of thing, where it's yo, I don't want to be the leader of this, I'm not going to be good at it and everything else. And she's trying to teach him and all that, yo, you can do this. I'll be here to support you and everything else. But I just thought it was like a key moment in this episode with them two getting together and them two having to talk, because obviously, Rhaenyra showed up on her dragon to let them know the news of like the king's dead and that they've already crowned Aegon as the new king in front of everybody and all this stuff. And so we're learning about these things, and I just thought that was pretty good. So what did you think, man, about like uh, the characters there? Prince, now the queen. At this moment in the show, she wasn't recognized as that, but like the queen, having these discussions with her son and stuff. And did you think it helped out later on in the episode whenever he bit the dust?
Yeah, it was just such a great moment when Rhaenys came in and was like, this is the dominoes are about to fall, and it's gonna get worse, and we got to take precautions now, because I didn't. She said it like it's not my war. The reason why she didn't have that dragon burn and toast all those Alicent and Aegon and all those people during the coronation of
Right. And to add to that is like with I always thought in my head, I didn't have a problem with her not doing it because she was locked up in a room and then they didn't kill her. They could have killed her right off the bat. You know what I'm saying? Like Alicent could have had her head chopped off from the very beginning, and all they did was help. They were holding her captive. They didn't just kill her right off the bat. So like I thought when she busts through the floor on the dragon that like she didn't do that. It was like, hey, look, this is your one get out of jail free card. You didn't kill me immediately. Yeah. You gave me a chance. I'm going to give you a chance kind of thing. And so I'm going to let you live, but this is the time. Next time we see each other, it won't be the same thing, right? But in this episode, I also would kind of agree with what she's saying. It's not her war to start. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though she's obviously possibly, because of her daughters and stuff getting married to Luke and Jace and stuff, like, she's probably going to fall in that line to help them out. But even with that said, like, this isn't her war to start. So I kind of agreed with that as well, right? So to me, it was like kind of two things helping together in that moment, because some people were confused, like, oh man, she could have just set fire to the thing and just like killed everybody. But then guess what, guys? The show would be over. We'd be rolling credits. It'd be sayonara, guys. What a show. But that would have been it. We wouldn't have got this next episode that we got if it wasn't for that.
It's one of those things that people are going to complain about till the end of time when it comes to movies. I can think of another example of this kind of scenario that happened where Rhaenys showed up and she didn't burn them, but she could have, and all the problems would have been gone if she did. It's the same as to say Star-Lord was the one that let Thanos take all the stones and then eventually get to where he was at the end of Infinity War. If he wasn't so angry at Thanos pissing him off.
This is the thing that I always like to tell people. We all want to think that we're going to be the hero or we're going to do the right thing, right? Like we're in the middle of like a big city or something like that. We'll say Boston, but since Brandi's next to me and that's, the area she's from. But like, you're walking down the streets of Boston and some purse snatcher comes up, you know what I'm saying, and grabs some purse from some 90-year-old woman that's trying to cross the street or something. We all want to think that we'll stick our leg out and trip them, or we'll run after them and catch them and save the day and get this lady's purse back. We all want to think that we would do something, you know what I'm saying? We wouldn't just stand there. But in all honesty, most of us, 8 out of 10 people, will just freeze and watch the whole thing. And then afterwards contemplate like, oh man, maybe I could have did this, or maybe I could have did that. But they just freeze and watch, you know what I'm saying? Like they don't know what to do in that moment. Like in these certain moments, like we don't know really what we would do. I would like to say I've never been in that position, but I'd like to say, like, if I saw something like that happen and I would do whatever I could to like stop it or maybe save the day. Like I want to, that's what I think I'm going to. But it's funny to me how people that watch shows or movies automatically assume the character should do whatever they want them to do or whatever they think's right. But like in their own personal lives, they wouldn't necessarily do what would be the right thing, like in Star-Lord's instance, like he had a lot of stuff going on, you know what I'm saying? Like he's got a lot of stuff in that instant in his mind, like, what should I do, what have you? And then like that little split second of time, a lot of people would freeze up, you know what I'm saying? Not just Star-Lord. But the same thing with this, like like I said, there's things going through her head. And this is a very honorable society, way different than what we live in today, as far as like back then or in this time period that we like. I say medieval, even though it's like a make-believe fantasy world, like it's set in this medieval time where there was like a lot of pride and honor. You didn't just, if you were a very honorable person, you wouldn't just set flame to this. You would actually be like, you know what? Hey, the real war is about to start. We'll do this fair and square, the honorable way, right? If you're the honorable person. Now, a lot of times in the Game of Thrones, honorable person doesn't come out on top a lot of times. Like we know that, but because the bad people do what they have to do to win. But as we know, like, so being honorable sometimes could be your downfall. And maybe that would be her downfall as well, because I don't think you have either, but I haven't. I know some of the stuff of the timeline, but I've never actually read this book. And one of the cool things that I think is there are things that are said in this book like a certain way, but then it leaves doubt because it's it's a history book. It's not an actual like literature, like it's not written like a Song of Fire and Ice or whatever. It's actually written in a different way. So like it's according on who that guy talked to, what point of view he got during that time period. So like some people are like, oh yeah, so like so and so, but that's interesting because they can fill in the gaps of how things truly happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that they want to make it seem like it happened and stuff like that. Like I know, for instance, that she, this doesn't happen. She doesn't come through the ground and stare at them with the dragon and everything in the actual history book. But I think it's cool that they did that to give that character, that one big moment and everything else and let her shine. Cause I actually do like the character, the times that she's been able to talk and actually show her, acting prowess. She's done really good. So I'm actually glad she got that moment and everything else. But yeah, like I said, people get hung up on some of the dumbest things sometimes to me, because in the long run, you wouldn't do that. Like
it's the Uncle Ben thing. It's like, oh, you let that guy get away, but I thought that was your problem. And then boom, boom, you know, and but you know, you never know with these things. But also, like, there's a reason and a point for it. This point, you know, she was trying to say, this is not my, this is not her war. And what you said, I really think that probably gives it a lot more clarity, that moment, saying that, you know, they showed her mercy by putting her in a room. They didn't kill her. And then she didn't burn them. And that was
she showed them mercy. And I'll put it to you like this, like in the moment, the way everything's been, and especially in this episode that we were in, it felt like she was watching the princess. She was watching, you know, as she gets anointed, even as she gets anointed as queen and everything else. Like she was really paying attention to her motives and actions at the moment. I don't know if she was truly going to be on Rhaenyra's side. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if she was going to actually choose that. I think that during this episode that she saw things, right? Like when she was sitting next to her husband, Corlys, whenever he got back and he's laying in bed, he's still kind of ill and everything else, but he's getting a little better. And she's talking to him and he's even admitting that she's right this whole time. Like she even says, like, the reason why she, the reason why she like basically is saying that she should side with the queen is because of the simple fact that, like, yo, she's the only one holding anything back. She's the only one being reserved about this and not just jumping to war. Everybody else wants bloodshed and everything else, where she's trying to hold everything together. I think that's when she's watching those events unfold and paying attention is when she actually made her decision about what side she's on. She technically, I don't think at the time that she rode through the floor was even on a particular side. Now, maybe she was leaning one way or the other a little bit, but I don't think she was 100%. Her die had not been cast on what side. And I think when she watched, you know, like Daemon's wanting to go to war and Rhaenyra's is like kind of holding back on it and stuff like that. Like, I think that's when she ultimately made her decision to, like, you know, oh yeah, well now I think she's actually good. Because you also got to look at it. They do think that she played a part in their son's death. Now we know in the show he's not technically dead. Like he just went off. He wanted to go. He didn't want to be there no more. That was kind of on his decision as well. But they helped set it up. And with the, you know, I just think that's a really good point. That, like, I don't even think she knew what side she was going to be on.
I think for what Rhaenys has gone through this entire series, and, you know, just reflecting on it, she's probably one of my names. She's one of my favorite characters in this series, and she is given the mantra, the epithet of the queen who is never promised, or one of the queen who never was, because the whole show they've hinted and riddled about the idea, play with the idea that you were supposed to be queen, you were supposed to be the king of the seven kingdoms in a certain sense, but she never was, and they never gave her that moniker. And I feel like we look at the of Team Black and Team Green. I feel like Team Black has been more, incidentally. I don't know if I want to say incidentally, but it seems like Team Black has kind of not been the nicest to her, because Rhaenyra married her son, and then they framed his death. Then they killed Corliss's brother, and then now with,
well, I mean, let's be honest here. Damon out here. Look, Damon ain't innocent,
Damon's
man.
a
Like, he's a
savage,
cool.
bro.
I love his character.
Damon's
I
a
love the
savage.
actor playing him. And some of his decisions, when he cut home dude's head off and said he can keep his tongue, great moment, great scene.
Yeah.
Like, I think that I actually liked him for doing that. I don't actually think he's a bad person for doing that, because like he told him to say it. Like, you say it, basically, like, you say it again. And the king had already said, you're losing your tongue. But then he didn't just say that they were bastards. He even basically called his wife at the time now, called her a whore. Like, hell nah, bro. Cut that motherfucker's head off. He deserved it. But I'm just saying right now,
he has his own moral high ground.
But now he killed his wife. Like, I think he was a good husband to was it a daughter? I think it was a daughter of Corlys. Like, his wife that had the dragon and stuff like that, and she died during childbirth and everything. I think he actually cared for her. I think he actually loved her, and it didn't look like he disrespected her. But his wife from the Vale, like, he murdered her, man. Like, he basically took her out. Like, so, like, let's don't act like this dude is like innocent. He's not. And that's the thing I love about this show, is, to be honest with you, the Greens and the Blacks, what side are you on? I will say this: the Blacks are leaning towards being the one that you would root for. They're like the lesser of two evils in most cases, because of how things are handled. They're not
both of them are lesser two. Both of them are lesser two evils. It's hard to argue that, but I mean, I would just throw this in there.
No, man, the Black are the lesser of two evils. They're not showing their feet to people to get secret information. They're not trying to run a coup to steal the throne and everything else. Now, there are reasons why the Greens may be doing what they're doing, but like the small council had already turned their back on the king before Alicent even heard the misrepresentation that she heard, right? Like, they were already, that council was already going to do a coup against the king. They're a bunch of, they're, to me, they're worse.
The Greens are. I thought the Greens were worse.
Oh yeah. But if you took Daemon out of the situation, the Blacks would be like obviously the good guys. Daemon is the only thing to this point that's really like soiling them. You know what I'm saying? Like, Daemon does some things that are is questionable and everything else. So like, we got that. But speaking of sides and picking sides, I do want to go ahead and transition into. I'm going to pull this picture up first. So we have two people of the King's Guard. They're both named, well, one's named Eric and one's named Eric. You got the one with the A and whatnot. The way you can tell them apart is like the one with the little the mustache twirled up. He's got the evil style mustache. He's the evil guy. He's on the Greens. And the one with the mustache down is the good guy. So like, that's how you can tell them apart. That's pretty interesting how you can do that. But we had one of the Erics show up, because according to how you say it, one starts with the A, one starts with the E. They kind of sound pretty much the same. But anyway, he brings a crown to anoint the queen. It shows his loyalty, which means the two brothers, twin brothers, matter of fact, are on opposite sides of the spectrum on this thing right here, which I find pretty interesting. Did you have any thoughts on like this, Alex? It's like this piece of information, him showing up and everything. We saw it in the last episode where he was kind of like going against his brother a little bit, didn't even really help his brother any, whatever. And they were trying to catch Prince Aegon at the time. But yeah, man, I'm actually going to be looking forward to what happens to them going on to season 2.
So which one bandwagoned? Eric with the E or Eric with an A?
To be perfectly honest with you, I get them confused. On the screen, I know it's the mustache down, like mustache regular, like
Pull up
mine.
the image of the crown. Pull up the image again with the crown.
I done deleted it, so
What?
yeah,
Oh,
I
Justin.
deleted it.
Um,
But he's the one with the one going down. Actually, you know what? Eric, the one with the A, is the you would consider the bad one because he's on greens. He's on the green side.
okay.
Uh, and the Eric, the one with the E, is on the good side.
It's gonna almost turn into like a hound versus the mountain situation, I think, as the season.
Yeah, I mean, not as like obviously that was pretty
yeah.
epic, but like
Yeah.
this right here, two twins to be like this, and they were actually friendly to each other. They didn't
It's
have the
not
same
going to
kind
be
of
two
story.
liver kings. It's just going to be two
Yeah,
guys,
exactly.
your brothers. It's like Cain and Abel or something like that. But no, yeah, it was kind of interesting. I mean, I feel like these two characters are kind of put in the background for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And as the series kind of went on, I mean, especially
They kind
towards
of
the
got
end,
more and more.
they started showing up more because I think they were both part of the Kingsguard, of course, and they were given a lot of privileges from Allison and all them. But I think definitely. I have not read Fire and Blood. I have not read the
I
books. I
want
don't know.
to after seeing this. I ain't gonna lie to
I
you.
don't because I want to keep watching the show. I just hope it
Yeah,
still remains the same.
I don't want to be spoiled or anything, but man, dude, like I kind of want to get the book and read up to where the show is. You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, there's a lot of history that you have to read leading up to this, which would be pretty cool. And then when you get to this, maybe read up to the spot that we're at in the show, and then stop there just to see the differences, but like don't go any further because I'm like you, I don't want to be spoiled on what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm like that with a lot of movies and shows. Like I'm really tempted to check out the David Lynch Dune to see what happens in the likelihood of the second Dune movie that's coming out in theaters probably next year. But at the same time, I don't want to because I like this vision. I like that first movie. I want to see where it goes. But for this, I think definitely you're going to get more of Eric with an E and Eric with an A, kind of play it off of Madison from She-Hulk. Madison with the Y where you don't know where you think it is, playing with that kind of shit. But I think, it's an interesting way. It's an interesting switch. I think, but again, I think we'll get more into that the next season.
Yeah, oh yeah. And then so it did have a moment. I do think that was kind of important with Damon here actually interacting with the two kids, the strong boys that some people will call them, Luke and Chase, because obviously what's going on in the show. But this is these dragons are just amazing how they look. Top notch CGI for work for this year for these dragons. There's going to be even more dragon action coming up in the next season or two because of the fact that they have to, obviously they're going to war. Dragons, they have dragons. They're not going to use them. They're not going to keep them hey guys, all right, we're going to come to a truce. We can't use dragons during a war. And then we'll find out that it's not going to be none of that happening. But Damon's showing him let me show you a lesson on loyalty, which I think he's screwing up here because he's showing loyalty through fear and not through the better way, obviously. Because he's got this dragon here waiting to burn these two guys alive as part of the Kingsguard to say yo, are you going to be with the real queen? Or are you going to be traitorous? Because if you are, we'll go ahead and give you a clean death. I just thought it was very interesting that Damon chose to try to show some of this and everything else. And if people don't know, that sword right there, that's Dark Sister. That's Dark Sister right there. But yeah, man, okay. What did you think about go ahead, because I know this piece of information. Dark Sister is in the original Game of Thrones. You just don't know about it or hear about it because the three-eyed raven is actually a guy. He's under another name during the Game of Thrones lore all the way up to the part that he's stuck inside that tree. But he takes Dark Sister with him. He actually has Dark Sister with him whenever he goes up to where the tree is beyond the wall.
That's what's his name? It's I know you're talking about the it's the guy in the cave, right? I forget the actor.
In the tree, in that big tree. He's the guy that's inside that tree.
Trying to remember his name, but no, he's in Seventh Seal. He was Lord Santeca in Force Awakens. Yeah, I don't know. I forget his name. He kind of reminds me of Christopher Plummer, but this scene was really dope. When he was we're going to war. You gotta compromise here. If you don't want to do this, we can burn you right now. If you want to stay loyal, stay loyal. But if you turn on us, we're gonna kill you. We're gonna hit you in the back as soon as possible. You know, he was doing some gangster shit. Like that was a really cool scene.
Yeah, it's kind of like it is kind of like a gangster scene, like the old gangster. You know, one guy, they may be some people shaving some money or whatever, and they'll throw one guy's hand on the table, and the dude have a big butcher knife, and they'll start talking to him and everything, and he'll start saying whatever he wants and stuff like that, and they won't cut his hand off or whatever in that particular moment to get loyalty from him and stuff from that point forward. So yeah, that's pretty interesting that you brought that up. But like, we do have dragons out there. We find out there's wild dragons. Now, if it's called a wild dragon, that means nobody's never rode them. But one of the dragons out there they call dragonless riders or riderless dragons because they have once been rode before. They just haven't after their the person that used to ride them died. And this is one you actually looked up the name of the dragon because, man, all these dragons and names of these people sound so alike, man. I mess up.
Damon listed all of them at the table like that one scene.
Yeah.
I was like,
whoa. But like,
whoa,
this one, I'll let you say the name, but I'm pulling up a picture right here of Damon because he goes to one of the riderless dragons, and we talked about this before we went live. So the name for this dragon, go ahead and bust that out.
Vermithor.
Vormithor. Okay, so the one thing I do know about this dragon is that this is the second oldest dragon. We do know that like Vagor, the one that Aemon has, is the oldest dragon. But this right here is the dragon. If I'm not mistaken, this may have been written by Jacaerys, who was like the guy who was the king before.
The king before that died in the beginning of the
it was a king that it was the king before the king, yes, that died. That
king, king before King Viserys.
Yep, and so this is his dragons. Nobody's ever rode him since he died and passed away. But Damon's out here basically recruiting dragons. I mean, he's smart because like you can get as many men, houses to claim banners for you or whatever. But if you got the more powerful dynamic of the dragons, like you obviously have a leg up. Because I mean, who cares about 500 men when one dragon can fly through and just burn them all to death? You know, one single second. So I thought this was really cool seeing he comes in. He doesn't come in all boisterous like Damon normally would. He comes in singing a sweet song. And this guy, the Mickelson guy, man, the dude can like sing. Like I'm pretty sure that was his true voice and stuff, but he was singing kind of beautiful here. He came in singing some kind of hymn or something like that to the dragon or whatever. I don't know if that's something he needed to do or like if that was just to calm his nerves or maybe to calm the dragon down, one or the other. But he shows up, he's singing that song and everything else, and he faces this dragon. So one can assume that he's recruited a dragon for the team, man. But like, you know, dude, it was beautiful. I thought it was beautifully done with the music and everything all put together.
Yeah,
I thought it was a good deal.
Man, Matt Smith did a great job singing that part. Also, the dragon, when I looked it up, it's dubbed as the Bronze Fury.
Yep.
Vermithor. Yeah, but I dug this scene a lot too. I'm a big sucker in movies or in shows where there's like this long line of history for some particular thing, organization, or whatever, or it's anything of that matter. But they unearth something and bring it to the fold for a war or an incoming invasion or something like that. I'm a big sucker when those moments happen in movies and shows. I think like they've done in Godzilla and other things. But this is I'm so excited for what this thing is going to do in the next season.
Oh yeah, and so then we start getting into, now they're not going to war completely yet. They do have the table. This table is called the Painted Table. It's the one in Dragonsong we saw in the original Game of Thrones. They're using it here, obviously, and stuff like that to see who's their allies, how everything may unfold, and everything else. I think it's cool. They got the candles all around it to keep it lit up so everybody
can see. The lava
was
awesome.
You got the people planning. I got another picture of a scene where it's got Damon and her next to this table and stuff like that. That's without the unlit candles and everything. But like, nah, man, it's a beautiful table. I wish I had that in my house because how cool it is. But yeah, they're not going 100% to war. They're going, this is just a little bit of planning stages, like of finding out who may be on their side, who isn't, and everything else. Yeah. But after these moments, we get to the thing that's going to incite the war, obviously. But yes, man, I love these scenes. I love the fact that, like I said earlier, Prince, or actually at this point it would have been Queen Rhaenyra, like because they sat here. She didn't want to just go to war. She didn't want to go automatically to have bloodshed. She didn't want to like rule over a kingdom that's full of ash because everything's burnt down.
Yeah.
And I really thought that like something we can bring up that I didn't have a picture of was whenever Daemon, you know, when we saw Eric show up with the crown and he lays it down and Daemon bends down and picks it up. He's the first one that does it or picks it up or handles it. And he looks at it for a little while and then he turns around and looks at her and then he walks up there and slowly puts it on her head. There's that moment of Daemon looking down at the crown because you know he kind of wants it, but like he's still loyal though. Like he looks at it for a second. You know, maybe he had some crazy thoughts in his head about certain things, but like, nah, man. He did give it to her, give the crown over to her and anointed her at that moment. He's the first one to bend the knee. And but yeah, dude, I love the scene. I love the imagery. That's one of the things that's greatest about like Game of Thrones. Cinematography is off. I don't think I've ever seen anything Game of Thrones related that didn't have like this beautiful and wonderful cinematography.
Yeah, and there was that scene with Daemon and Rhaenyra getting close to the table, and I think that's the scene where they have everyone get out of the room and they have that serious conversation. And that was, I think that's after Rhaenyra gets the crown, or that happened later. I'm not very sure. I've only seen the episode once, but Daemon goes and chokes her, and she tells him about the Song of Ice and Fire, and she mentions how like Viserys told him about this, and you know, she's like, wait, Viserys never told you about this, you know, stuff like that. I think, and you know what you mentioned, something interesting about how Daemon looked at the crown. If that happened right before, do you know if that did?
Right before which part?
When you know, one of the Erics gives the crown.
Yeah, no. He shows up, bends the knee for the crown, and says all the stuff to be a king's guard, basically, to the queen. And then he holds it up, and then Daemon's the one that grabs it and walks over to the queen and puts it on her head.
And then everyone bows, right?
Everyone bows, yes.
And then after that is the scene around the table when he chokes her.
Yeah, it's after all that, yes.
I was gonna ask you, do you think him looking at that crown made him like, and then realizing, you know, still having to be loyal?
Look how close he is.
Yeah. Do you think that like that he was trying to get some of his anger out by choking her? Maybe.
Nah, because like if you look at some of the imagery and stuff during the season, one of the first times he ever did anything with her, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like he had his hand up to her throat.
Want to be dominant, but you know she was wanting to be more. Yeah.
I think it's one of those like showcasing some dominance, but yet at the same time, like he still honors her in a lot of ways. If you notice that scene too, where he grabs her by the throat, she didn't look shocked or fearful. She just kind of steps back and takes a couple of deep breaths because he was actually like choking her a little bit and stuff during that scene. But like, I don't think it was like obviously you shouldn't be doing that as a guy, like to your wife or whatever and whatnot. But like, I don't think it was as bad as what you would normally see. I think it's one of those things that like she knows that he's here. Like he knows that like he's supposed to be her right hand, like supposed to be basically her sword.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why they ultimately got together. That's why she ultimately wanted to be with him, is because she knows that he's not going to take no crap off of nobody, kind of thing. And she needs somebody there. Like, what was her biggest complaint? She didn't have a complaint with her first husband, except for the fact that like he just wasn't there to help protect, because he kept going off and gallivanting and stuff like that and wanting to leave and not want to be there. If he would have been around more to help protect her and stuff like that and to help protect the family, I don't think she would have ever chose not to be with him anymore, because I don't think they had any problems. They both lived their lives the way they wanted to. But like she needed somebody like Daemon that's going to be there present to be able to help protect them and stuff like that. But it is there. But now right after she gets crowned, so like we got to look at it. She has that still, which we really didn't talk about at the very beginning of this. Probably should have said a couple words about it. But like this episode starts with the queen having a stillbirth. You know what I'm saying? A deformed baby that even looked like it had maybe parts of a dragon or something possibly to it. But it definitely was deformed. It definitely had things wrong with it. She has this baby and everything else. And she's like cremating the baby and everything. And that's when Eric comes up, is during that scene. And then not long after that, she gets this butthole showing up.
Oh,
Otto
this
over here.
scene, bro. This
Yeah, she
scene.
gets Otto over here coming down, saying that they're here as a peaceful, trying to make demands and whatever, and saying like if you agree to terms, like we won't have to go to war. Obviously, he sets forth all these like different things that needs to happen with her kids, and all this, saying they'd get to keep Dragonstone and everything else. I think this was a beautiful scene too, because she comes flying down on her dragon, because at first it's Damon out there to meet him, and then like he's like, where's the princess, and then all of a sudden you just hear the dragon wail and come out of the distance and flies around. I think it was cool that she puts the dragon behind them, behind his men and everything, so there's really no escape path because they're on this narrow style bridge leading up the Dragonstone. And then she walks up to him and they have this conversation. I love the fact that she actually shows some of her dominance when she reaches out, grabs the hand of the king symbol, rips it off his jacket, calls him a traitor, throws it out into the water, and tells him like that, basically he's letting it know like, yo, I'm the queen now, and you're a traitor. That's what it is, and everything else. And then I love the line that Damon was like, "I'd rather feed my sons to the dragons, and not have them be cupbearers and servants and stuff like that." So like,
Yeah.
that was a pretty interesting scene. Really liked it. I really liked that Rhaenyra showed like dominance here. I thought,
Rhaenyra.
Rhaenyra. Man, I'm gonna mess the names up 500 times because everybody's name
That's why I'm
sounds like
here,
the same.
buddy.
Aemon and Aegon and
That's why I'm
everybody
here.
else, but like. With that being said, you guys know who I'm talking about. But like, with that being said, like I really like this scene. I really love it. Like I said, it looked beautiful again. Her coming down and really showcasing that dominance for the first time, I really enjoyed. I mean, what did you think? Yeah, in some ways, I agree.
Wait, what'd you say?
She said looked like her dad a little bit too.
Yeah, and it also reflects and mirrors the scene in I think the second episode or the beginning of the series where Damon is trying to stand his ground against Otto. Funny enough, and
they meet again. This is
on
the
his
exact same
side.
scene, basically. Yeah,
She is on his side, on Otto's side, but instead, she's on Damon's side. And then she comes in the same exact way, and I just love how that mirrored and that worked.
Same exact scene. Yeah, you're right, because they were there to get the egg. Damon ends up just giving them the egg and doesn't fight over it or whatever, the dragon egg that he so-called stole. I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's basically the same thing, except for this time she's standing next to Damon.
Yeah.
Last time she stood up to Damon because she didn't want things to go any further and everything else. And this time she's standing with Damon. Now, it is funny, though, that she does the same thing. It mirrors it more than maybe even you thought at first, because if you remember the first time, she was there to kind of hold Damon back from like starting out another like war or battle or anything.
Right. Red herring for
in this scene. Yeah, exactly. In this scene.
In the beginning, yeah.
Right. But in this scene as well, even though she's on Damon's side, she's still there to hold him back, because he's like, yo, give me this guy's withered cock. You know what I'm saying? And he tells Eric to like go and get it and save it for me. He's mine, or something like that, basically, because he pulls out Dark Sister again. Dark Sister's hungering for blood or cock, whatever you want to say. And he's about ready to get this battle on, and she's there, and she says no. She stops him again, like from doing something that he was going to do.
Yeah, she's like no.
Yep. Like they don't. Some of it's because she gets a page of the book she had tore out. And I love the way like these shows do this. Like that was one of the first episodes. She tears a page out of the book of Nymeria. The story of Nymeria. She takes a page out of it and tears it up, but leaves it whole. But she tears it out of the book, and this is Alicent, sending down like, remember when we were friends? Like we can try to do this peacefully. And there's this still that last hope, that last ditch effort of like, man, maybe we don't have to kill everybody. Maybe we all don't have to die. Maybe we can stop this from happening kind of moment. And I think that's why, again, there's a second moment here. You almost could end this whole thing if the dragon just breathes fire on the people on that bridge, obviously, except for like Damon and them. But like you kill Otto there, you might stop everything. But this is another one of those moments like, man, like if I do this is going to start the war, a real war. Like maybe there's a way that it doesn't go down super bad.
What's really interesting about the chemistry between both Rhaenyra and Damon is that Damon is very much an enforcer. He wants her to do certain things. He wants to get on and because he has such a moral high ground. He's so convicted in what he wants to do, and he's so driven to do it. You know what I mean? Like any step he'll make on his own, like killing Corliss's brother, um, you know, I think and going back to the whole thing with him and Lena, whenever I think that was the girl's name. He had her kid. They shared 2 kids, but then she was gonna die of childbirth, and then she burned herself in the dragon. I felt like he was kind of gallivanting and doing his own thing. I don't think he was superiorly happy with that, but he is just convicted in his own ways. But I think with the chemistry he has with Rhaenyra, also being her her I think it was niece. Yeah, I think it's niece.
Yo, bro, this family tree flows one way. If you get what I'm saying. There's not a lot of limbs going on the family tree of the Targaryen.
Fuck your brother. You can't fuck your uncle, but you fuck your cousin. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But Rhaenyra, Rhaenyra is kind of very. I think she's a lot. She thinks. She's very mental about certain things. Like she thinks, she strategizes, but also she's a little hesitant because I think she's coming into the fold of understanding how this game works. And I think Daemon has I think he has a good idea of it. But I love that scene on the bridge. That was just fantastic.
Oh yeah, both the one earlier this season in the season and the one we just saw was like amazing.
Both how they coincide with reflecting each other.
Yeah.
And it also feels like the first episode, the in the beginning of the series, it was a red herring for war because you thought, oh shit, Daemon's gonna get on the high road. This asshole's gonna start a fight against this family, and oh my god, and it kind of would have felt a little stereotypical if they did go that route.
Alex, I don't think anybody's sitting back going, "Oh my god!" Like, please don't, because like we're watching the show to see the battle. We're watching the show. We want the blood. We want the blood, Alex. That's why we're watching it.
But I'm saying it would have been kind of stereotypical because this character is like, all right, well, this guy, he's very arrogant. This Kylo Ren motherfucker, he wants to just do something. But they didn't do that. They made him more human, and we'll talk about that more as the review goes on. But what else would you want to know?
No, yeah, I mean, like basically we have that. Then we have another scene with the queen and her 2 sons as she's sending them both off because they can arrive pretty quick with dragons to go and talk to certain families and stuff that might be on their side. We had one of them go, man, I got kind of hyped because I was like, oh damn, we're about to see Winterfell, because she sends one of her sons down to the Eyrie, if I'm not mistaken, and down to he had 2 stops, and one of the stops obviously was Winterfell for the Starks. And then we also had Luke, and she sent him to the closest because he's the younger. She thought it was probably going to be the safest place because it's so close to them, but she sends him the dragon, the storm.
It's the Aaron. It's the House Aaron.
No. She sent him to the Baratheon home, Storm's Wind.
Oh, okay.
So because it's not that far away, it's a little bit closer. Like we're gonna send you to him and everything else, and then they fly off. Well, we know when something like this is happening, it ain't setting up things for good. So Luke shows up. He talks to the Baratheon, and it turns out that Aemon's already there with his big ass dragon. One of the coolest scenes is whenever he flies in on his small dragon and he lands and he's getting off and he's starting to walk up to the castle or whatnot, and you see like big old Vagar back there, like, and he just raises his head up off the ground and he's like 20 times bigger than the castle. It's like crazy. But with that being said, he walks in there. Aemon's already there to do his plea to get the Baratheons on their side of the family, on the green side. Luke's there for the black side, and they're talking. Basically, the Greens had a better pitch because they were like, Aemon would marry one of my daughters. Like, what do you have to offer? And Luke was like, I'm already betrothed. I can't. So, like, they didn't really bring nothing to the table. And he was like, yo, you can leave, pup, and tell your queen whatever. And then, like, Luke's trying to leave. This is also the kid who took Aemon's eye in one of the earlier episodes when they were younger kids. And Luke's there by himself. He has no real protection. His dragon's not that big of a protection because like the other dude's got a bigger dragon. So like it ain't gonna happen. But Aemon throws him the dagger and says, hey, before you leave, by the way, you think I'm gonna let you just walk out of here when you're trying to get friends on your side and let you get out of here scot-free. Eye for an eye, baby. I need you to take an eye. I'm not going to blind you and stuff like that. You only have to take one eye out. And Luke's like, no, I'm not doing that. And they go to get into a quarrel. Baratheon, I can say this for the guy. He is a little bit honorable here because he steps in and says, not in my house.
No fighting.
Get him out of here. Take him to his dragon. We are not having this happen in my home. No bloodshed in my home. These are messengers. You're not going to have this happen. So he does let Luke go out and get on his dragon, but it's like nobody's still helping him. Aemon obviously goes out and gets on his big-ass dragon, and we have this really cool scene of Luke trying to, and it's a storm going on, so the wind and the rain, and he's trying to fly away as fast as he can. You got Aemon on this big-ass dragon, it's like basically like poking and prodding him and trying to scare him and everything else. And all that. And to be honest with you, like I didn't know if he was just playing for it with his food at that point, like if he was going to be trying to kill him in any way, no matter what happens, like basically playing with him at first and then kill him. But I was surprised because as this unfolds, the smaller dragon is more nimble, obviously. It was able to get away for a second. You think they possibly might escape. The storm clouds are starting to recede because they're flying away, obviously, and everything else. So like, as Luke kind of feels more comfortable, he comes out of this crevice they had flew into, and old Vagar's right there. Right before they go into there, Luke's dragon does shoot fire at Vagar. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's all Vagar's fault that he's a piece of crap dragon. I'm not going to put all the blame on him. He did get shot in the face with some fire. So, but as Luke's coming out of the crevice, we have this big daddy right here bite the dragon in half. You see the wings fall into the from the sky. Luke's obviously in that dragon's gullet, eaten alive. It's pretty crazy scene. But the whole time, I do have to say, Aemon didn't want this to happen. He was truly just playing with the kid. Like, he still wants to get some semblance of revenge, but he didn't want to kill the kid. You can see the look on his face right here of him kind of realizing, like, oh, shit, things are about to get serious now, and it's kind of my fault. And I can see in his eye, I can't say eyes because he only got but one, but I can see in his eye that, like, at this moment, he realizes, I got to own this, even though I didn't want it to happen. I've got to own this. So I have a feeling in season 2, when he gets back home, he's not going to act like it was an accident. He's not going to plead for forgiveness or anything. I think he's going to say, nah, you know what? He took my eye. I'm owning this, and he deserved to die or whatever.
It was when the dragon went off, and he was actually trying to stop them and telling the dragon to listen to him, like, basically. The dragon went off by itself to do.
No, I get it. Like, he couldn't control his dragon. Vagar did his own thing. I understand that part of it, and Brandy's got a good point there. But my point is, on the picture on the left, this is after he eats Luke. Like,
no,
he has to make a choice. He's going to make a choice, though. I know. That's what I'm saying. He didn't want the dragon to do that, but like, he's going to make a choice at this moment. You either go home and try to come up with all the excuses how he couldn't control his dragon, how this, and this, or he's going to own this moment, and he's going to basically say that he did it on purpose. I think he's going to own it because that's what he's going to want to do, right? Because he doesn't want to go and act like, oh, well, I didn't do this. Like, it makes him look a little weak. I think he's going to own this moment. Like, I'm not saying he was doing that in this show. I'm talking about next season when he arrives home. I think he's going to tell people, like, I took him out.
I think he's going to be conflicted.
His dragon like blew fire at mine, and we ate him. Like, I mean, I think that's how he's going to act. I don't think he's going to be, oh God, forgive me, I didn't mean to kill Luke. I don't think he's going to be sitting there. I think, Alex, you're going to be right. I think in his heart and his mind, he's conflicted. Obviously, you can tell by the photo that I pulled up, he's conflicted. And I do want to point out, every time this dude does something, I'm starting to like this kid, even though he's kind of a little asshole. But like, every time he does something kind of cool, he's always got that lip thing going on, bro. He's always got that lip thing going on, bro. He puckers them up, you know what I'm saying? Like, when he's got something important going on.
This kid is incredible.
I love the actor.
I love
good
this
job.
kid. Yeah,
good
this
job.
Guy's not a kid, but this guy is awesome. I hope he's in everything moving forward. Like, I mean, he perfectly encapsulates like a villain. He's got the face for it, you know, and all that. The eye patch is awesome. But, you know, there's a couple things I do want to bring up with this, because what's really funny, you know, going back a couple episodes ago, with the inciting incident about Aemon, you know, being mistreated with a pig and all that shit. And then he gets Vagar, rides it, and then he gets in the scuffle with the kids, and then the kid cuts his eye. I think Luke did it. You know, they were all very young, but he was the youngest of of his like family crew. And as he gets older, he looks older than everyone else. And plus,
I love the symbolism. Like,
and
Brandi always making a joke.
Plus, he's got the biggest dragon, right?
No, that's my point. That's what I was about to bring up. Is that like Brandi always jokes because like in that photo that I had like up there, like she makes a joke like it looks like he's 40. You know what I'm saying? But like
older than me.
But the thing about that is I actually love the symbolism of it, and I didn't understand it until like he ended up getting the bigger dragon, and I started putting the irony together. It's because like he was this weak kid that got made fun of. He was the weakest. He was bullied, you know, and then he does this thing to like change his life. He has this life altering situation where he chose that, like, you know what, the only chance I have is to go get me a dragon, and like he decides to go get the biggest one. Right. He stands up against his fear and everything. He's obviously afraid, but he still goes up there and does it, and he succeeds. He gets the biggest dragon out there. And then because he was picked on and bullied, when he comes back with that dragon, obviously he's cocky now. He's got more confidence, obviously. He just won the biggest dragon that you could get, the oldest dragon. You know what I'm saying? So like now he's got this confidence. I got this dragon behind my back. So he shows up, and then they get in a fight with the kids, right? And like he ends up losing his eye because of it and everything else. Kind of still a bad thing. Everybody else got pushed and punched, but he lost an eye. He got the worst of this ordeal, although he did win the big dragon. So that like helped him, you know, kind of, you know, go past that. You know what I'm saying? And then he's that kid that gets that growth spurt, right? But like he was the smallest and bullied and everything else, but he got the growth spurt. He's that kid that turned 13 or 14 years old, and all of a sudden now they look like they're 17 or 18. They're one of the stars. Like if this wasn't medieval times and we wasn't riding dragons and it was like football, he'd be that kid that like was puny, got picked on, and then like in a short span of 3 or 4 years becomes the biggest and baddest kid, one of the most athletic out there, you know, and he worked hard, became trained with a sword and everything else, right? So like I actually like the symbolism. He was this puny small thing that people made fun of, and then he got the biggest dragon. He kind of grew with his dragon. After he got the dragon, he becomes this big thing. He becomes this big personality. He becomes this person that's way better because now he's got this confidence, you know what I'm saying? That like, oh yeah, the same thing could be said about a lady that maybe they were picked on as a kid and called ugly and stuff, and then they get to like their teenage years and they kind of blossom, and now they're like looked at, and all of a sudden now they're not getting made fun of or laughed at. They're getting looked at with oohs and ahs and everything else, and the confidence that girl gets, you know, because of that and everything, and how they like walk differently and act differently. So I really think that's cool and everything else. So I like that symbolism, and that may even be an accident, but like I like the symbolism.
His cockiness, anyway. His cockiness really overrided.
Fits the dragon. The rest like his cockiness fits the dragon.
But also like the other kids, all like in the whole bunch are young or were older than him. Yet he got the growth spurt. And then Luke, however,
I don't think he was the youngest. I actually think Luke was the youngest out of them. He was just the one picked on because like he was the dorky one. You know what I'm saying? Like and everything else. And like Luke just joined in with the two older guys.
And also with the dragon fight, and also I want to bring up a scene right before all that stuff happened, which was interesting. But the fact that, you know, you think, well, okay, sometimes the small animals can get around the big ones. And of course, with the little crevice that Arax was able to get through with Luke, you're like, okay, so there's some advantage here. And so
bro, just stop. All you had to do was stop.
But, and also, here's this too. Throughout this entire series, right, we have all these human characters. They're acting like assholes and then have these good moments, you know, but they're human, you know, they make good choices, bad choices, blah, 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 blah. Dragons kind of like do their own thing and, you know, help them out when need be. And they're loyal, right? And then this last episode shows, nah, they ain't giving shit.
Bro, dude, it was like the pit bull. You try to be like,
I'm going to go for it.
It's like, good, right?
No, it's like,
you raise your pit bull good. It's trained. Do it. Yeah, you got the pit bull on the collar. You're taking it for a walk, and it's normally fine. And then a rabbit or a squirrel runs across the path you're on, and that damn pit bull I don't care. I'm a big dude. I'm not holding back a fully grown pit bull that wants to go after a squirrel. He's going to jerk me around he's going to control me for a moment. Maybe I regain control over a little bit of time, but in that moment that he wants to go after that squirrel, bro, I'm not holding that pit bull back, and that's a dog. This is the biggest dragon known to fantasy worlds, probably. Not just man.
And also with the idea that, I mentioned how the after effect of this incident that happened with Vhagar eating up Luke and Araxes, and the idea of Aemon wanting to say, yeah, I did that, yeah, or whatever. I feel like out of all the interactions with Alicent, she's mainly had a lot of interactions with I forget the girl. I think it's Helena. It's mainly been with Aegon. I don't think we've had enough with Aemon.
Right. I actually do think that she respects him, but that's Aegon's the one in trouble. You know how the kid is always in trouble, always gets the most attention because the parents kind of have to.
That's true.
It's not because the parents love that kid more or wants to spend more time with that kid, but it's because they have to. That's the punk ass little kid that's out here getting in trouble all the time, drinking when he ain't supposed to, out there trying to schmooze with the girls too much.
Christian Harloff would say, yeah.
But
also, I think, and also what it comes down to, and what I've realized throughout this entire season, I feel like Alicent hasn't been the most, and look, I'm no parent, but I don't think she has been as, I feel like she has, but I don't feel like she hasn't been the most, I'm trying to think of the word for it, overseeing parent, making sure their kids are doing the right thing.
She ain't got to.
Yeah,
I mean, listen. Here goes the thing.
Focus too much on Aegon. That's what I'm kind of getting.
Because she has to. Like I said, she only focuses on him when he's screwing up, because she has to step in at that moment. But think about this. This goes on in our country today, and this is one of those things where some people would say "Oh man, she's like a crappy parent and everything in this story and all this stuff," right? With that being said, think about it. If you're rich, you got nannies. These parents don't parent either. She's in a castle. Yeah. She has all these women that are supposed to watch and pay attention to and everything with her kids. She doesn't have to be the parent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that she's and that backfires heavily.
Yeah, she's like the parents that'll throw on YouTube for their kids to watch as they go and do other things. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you can't afford the servants, but you got YouTube or you got some kind of game you can put your kid in front of, whatnot. A movie or something. The same thing. It's our society has gone to where they'll let other things take control of their kids and watch their kids for them and babysit their kids for them, especially in a richer society. She's part of that high echelon. She's got people to watch her kids. Why? Then she feels I don't have to be there every moment. So
it's a sense of discipline. I feel like she doesn't have as much discipline for her kids because I feel like she's obligated to do a lot more important. Not say it's important because it is. No, it is important. It is important. But I feel like she has this mindset of, oh, well, towards the end of this last episode, Aegon got coordinated and everything like that. Right. And her whole father's been all right, you're going to try to get through this Game of Thrones because we got you with Viserys. We're going to get, we're going to hopefully maybe get you, and this has probably said something behind the scenes, we're going to try to get one of your sons on the throne. Everyone's trying to get for that throne, boy.
And the crazy part is, and it's hard for me to understand, or not even hard for me to understand. I understand it completely because I wish I was more like this in real life. But I just brought up the thing, you go to a family dinner and everybody's on their God's darn phone and everything else. And you're supposed to be at a family dinner, spending time with each other and stuff. That's how our society has become today. But I wish it wasn't that way. You know what I'm saying? And I wish people cared about their family. Otto, even though he's kind of a piece of shit and he does things in a crooked way, him caring about his family and wanting his family to get to the highest position possible that he can help get it to, it's not a bad thing overall, right? It's a good thing. He's trying to take care of his family. It's not about him getting the Iron Throne. He just wants his family to get charge and have charge of the Iron Throne.
He has a strategy. He has a goal. He has.
His reason is just because of the love for his family, man, because he wants his family to get higher and higher and higher. Now that ambition makes him do stupid things and mean things and things that aren't right. That's
how it's going to be, though. That's how it's going to be in life for anybody. You're going to make enemies regardless if you try to reach for that. But yeah.
But like I said, overall, that's a good thing, though. I wish people paid more attention to their families and nowadays, right? I wish people had that kind of ambition for their families. No, don't go do it the wrong way. Don't step on others to get your family to be better and bigger, but like do it the right way, but have that same kind of passion and ambition and stuff like that. Like I said, it's the way he does it that makes him the bad person, not what he's trying to do.
And it's
there's
not
a
even
way,
about,
there's a way to do what he's trying to do, but because he's doing it in a bad way, that makes him the piece of crap, right? There's a lot of things that happens in life where like people are just trying to do whatever that's kind of innocent, but then like because they do it a certain way is what makes it bad.
But the ambition, but it's not only just the ambition, it's also the care. I think that's, when it comes to that, I think Allison didn't, I think, and Otto is very much about ambition. I think Allison was also trying to feed into the idea of ambition and also a little bit of self-interest and a little bit of succession because she got with that weird, the dude with the crooked foot who likes the feet. And, he is a good power player for her.
It's all about the feet, man.
Yeah, it's all about the feet. You got to make sure where people walk. You can't walk in a straight line. You gotta cross that off. You got to make sure you're walking a straight line so you can get to the top. And that's what she wants to do.
All right, so man, that happens. We get a dragon eaten, we get a kid eaten at any time, man. Let me tell you something. Like, I think there was some imagery at the very beginning of this episode when she was given the stillbirth. The dragon was mixed in and everything else. Like, the Targaryens are known as the dragons and everything else. That kind of stuff. She's trying to be the calm dragon. She's trying to keep that under control. She's trying to be the one that's going to be like, you know what? I don't want people to have to die just because my family's having a squabble kind of situation, which is the honorable thing. But when your kid dies, and let me tell you something, man. Anything, people even look at my kid wrong, you get this kind of look. And this is the look of I don't give a flying fuck no more. I don't care. I will rule over ashes to not have something like that happen to one of my kids again. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the time and place to where now this whole thing, the story about this, even though the show's called The House of Dragons, the actual story that this comes from is called Fire and Blood. The fire will be shed. The blood will be shed now. This is the final look at the queen as we're going away. She means business now. She doesn't have to have Damon there to try to coax her into going crazy. Everything else, she has gotten there on her own. I don't watch every single one of them, but I did like the fact that I stayed tuned because this was the final episode and watched that afterwards. And you have some of the actresses and actors talking about certain situations and parts of the stories that they're on where she was like, I didn't know. She's like, I thought I knew grief when I had the stillborn. I thought I knew grief when my mother died. But this is the moment of the story that she says her character that she's portraying finally learned what grief really was. And let me tell you something, man. Grief will make you do the craziest things in the world, dude. I don't even want to be around myself. Like I said, if something were to happen to one of my kids in the wrong way, like I'm one of my kids, I ain't got but one kid. I don't know why I say kids, but like my kid in the wrong way, because like straight up 100%, I wouldn't be comfortable around myself, much less anybody else should feel comfortable around me if something like that were to happen. So like, with that being said, dude, I thought this was a very powerful imagery. I thought this was it's a real quiet scene, but very powerful at the same time.
Yeah.
It sucks that this is episode 10 out of 10 episode season because, dude, we may have to wait a year and a half or so for the next season to actually start happening. And I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait 5 minutes, dude. Like, I love the fact that Game of Thrones gives us week by week television so that we can chill back. We can take in what we saw and we can talk about it like we do on shows like these. I love this format better than the binge format all the time. Binge format to me sometimes kills a show. I don't even care about doing it because of the format it's in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you right now, if there was a way to press play and me watch at least the first episode of season 2, I would have me. I wouldn't have been able, even me, somebody that don't like doing that, couldn't have helped but hit play. I would have had to watch the first episode of season 2 because that's this imagery. I'm gonna throw it back up again. This right here of the mother dragon not giving a crap no more makes me want to see season 2 so bad. It's not even funny, man. Like, I love the ending on this, even though it leaves you wanting more. But isn't this stuff supposed to leave us wanting more? Don't we supposed to want more when we're done?
Yes, absolutely. It makes you want to rewatch the whole series again right before the new one comes out. I mean, that's the point. And this was, I honestly, when this episode ended, because, for any season that ends or any series that ends the final episode, it's all about execution. Execution will mean everything. And it also is based off recency bias on how you think about something, because it's just something, it's the last thing you've watched. It's the last stuff that you've watched from a certain property like this. I knew what they were trying to do with these last 2 episodes, where they focused on one family and then they focused on the other. But in between those two, they build it up to the actual war that is going to happen and happen in the second season. And I will say I was a little disappointed with the ending of this season, but overall, I think it works so tremendously from how they structured it. And this, Emma Darcy, I mean, they are an incredible actor. I just can't wait to see what they do in the next season. And I mean, this whole cast was just incredible. But that moment right there when Uranera is, leaning at the fireplace and
yes,
leaning down, and then her head comes up. And does that turn around? Like,
she walked. I love the fact of the fire being in the background, like you just said. And at first, she's back towards us, like we don't see her face, we can't see it, but
you see a little bit of shrugging
as a father. As a father, I know that moment of like, I gotta be sad for a second, but when I get through with this couple of seconds of sadness, couple of seconds of grief, there will be rage. Mm-hmm. There will be pain that follows after there will be anger immediately. And that's what I think she was going to. That walk to the fire was that moment of grief, that moment of letting yourself tear up, cry, and everything else. And then you get this. To be honest with you, I hope that season 2, episode 1 starts at this moment. At the moment. Like, you see her. Like, I wouldn't care if they rewinded a little bit and show her walk into the fire again and then slowly turn around, and then it immediately goes into the next scene of like what she does in that moment, what she says in that moment. Like, I actually think I'd really love season 2, episode 1 to literally start right there at that moment and everything else. But man, I love this season. I love House of Dragons. I love Game of Thrones as a whole, as you can see with the flags and stuff in the background. It's right up there next to Star Wars with me. Star Wars is still number 1, but hell, Game of Thrones keeps putting out this kind of quality stuff. Bro, Game of Thrones might turn into be the biggest IP. And I'm talking about out of Star Trek, Star Wars, maybe even possibly catching up with the MCU. MCU starting to drop the ball a little bit, man.
Yeah.
They were perfect. In the red zone, they were about to score.
Yeah, they weren't perfect.
They were almost there, though. They were almost as close to perfect. They were like a 90-something percentile, you know what I'm saying, of a movie coming out.
I love it.
And most people enjoying it. But now they're starting to drop the ball. They have more and more misses as we keep going further and further and further away from that, memorable 20-something movie stretch through Infinity War. So, like, there's going to be things that change here. Game of Thrones has a chance to step up there and become the big dog. And like I said, quality television like this right here is going to make it. People will talk about this season until the next season starts up. I might even rewatch the season a couple of times, like you're talking about, before the next season even releases. I'm going to give myself some time to process it and everything else. But we'll see what's up. But like, Alex, overall, man, season-wise, dude, like, obviously you're pretty high on it as well, it seems.
Okay, so I have an idea for how this. I love that idea of the first episode, second season starts out with Rhaenyra looking at the camera after the fireplace. I have another pitch. It starts right after, from the perspective of Aemon, after everything goes down on the dragon, and he has to fly all the way back to King's Landing, and then it's like the perspective is all on him. It's like a one-shot thing, and like he hears about Alicent's telling him like, "Oh, what the hell just happened?" And
what
it's
if they timed it up perfectly, like where they have that scene where she's walking towards the fireplace. They have her walking towards the fireplace. They cut to Aemon, like you said, riding the dragon, and he's showing up at King's Landing. Then you cut back to her still walking towards the fireplace. maybe even with her shoulders doing the slump thing like you're talking about a little bit, where she's almost gasping for air kind of thing. And then you see Aemon, you don't even hear it. You just see Aemon talking to his mom. You know what I'm saying? And you see Aemon walking up to her and her back's turned. Rhaenyra's back is turned as well. Obviously, you were looking at the fire. Her back's turned, listening to her son whisper something in her ear about the situation. And they both turn around at the same time, almost like a split screen moment, or cut back and forth really quick, where you're seeing both of them kind of slowly turn around and the looks on both of their faces.
I want it to be, and you would be favorable of this analogy. I want it to be like Rhaenyra and crew are coming in like a slasher to like a cabin, and like the perspective is on the people that are in the cabin. They don't know what's going on, and the dragons are coming in. But we're probably not going to get that because I don't know exactly how Dance of the Dragon goes on. But look, man, this show, this season of House of the Dragon was incredible. It stands on its own as one of the best seasons in the overall Game of Thrones pantheon.
One of the best seasons in television history.
From my watch, out of
quality acting, cinematography, music, all of it.
I haven't watched too much TV, but I would say the original Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad are probably my favorite too.
Yeah, that's why I say one of the best. I'm not saying it is the best, bar none.
But House of the Dragon,
what I like is that, but it's right up there.
It's a great House of the Dragon season 1, and I like the first season of Breaking Bad. I like the first season of Game of Thrones. I probably would like the first season of Game of Thrones more than the first season of Breaking Bad, but I think I like this season more than the first two. And also, I just want to give just reflect on the best moments that we thought that happened in this series, in the season so far. Or just like pick out some of our favorite moments that has happened in the show. One of my favorites, and also I'll mention my favorite episode. I think personally my favorite episode is episode 8. Because this whole show revolved around this character Viserys, and his of course his daughter and his brother.
Yeah, growth as a king. He's peaceful, but maybe that wasn't the right choice all the time.
Wasn't the greatest king. Was kind of, I think very much he was kind of conflicted and not really in the best suit to have the reins for the job that he was supposed to have.
Look, man, they made him to be weak and everything else, but like during his whole reign, which was a pretty good amount of years, like and Annie was being sick through most of it. Like he kept the realm together. Things didn't fall apart under him. Now, because of the decisions he made with his family and not being more stern with that earlier on, and maybe getting into stopping it at the very beginning, like this ain't happening, we're not doing this, and being very staunch about it, I think he was a very good king for the realm, but not a good king for his family. There's a difference there, right? The realm was kept in peace, which was good, right? Like that's all we really want, like from our leaders, is to be leading with peace and have violence, be lower than what it was before, or not be in wars all the time. But most of the time for our leaders and everything else, kind of just being there and being somebody respectful. But he was a good leader for the realm. Everybody respected him, right? Even the people that may have thought he made weak decisions sometimes still respected him because he was a good man. The thing is, though, he wasn't the king for his family because he let that go too far. Yeah. That should have been stopped at the very beginning.
Go with that idea, I think they wanted more for him, I think, to do. But I think everything was just focused on who were the successors going to be, who was going to marry Rhaenyra, what is Daemon going to be doing. And I think a lot of that was focused on what's going to happen next after Viserys. And even though Viserys was in that conversation, because the first part of the series was like, all right, who's going to wed Viserys and then pass down more lineage of kids, But again, it all comes down to succession and the growth of that. But back to what I was saying, this character Viserys, that episode 8, when you see how much that council's kind of tore him up and essentially just drugged him and just turn him into a monster and on the outside. Not that one. Viserys, whenever he walks into that throne room, you just feel like you're aching like him. Like when he's walking down the steps and all that stuff and coming up the throne. I love that moment.
Oh, they're great.
And what I also took about this, and I watched.
Do you realize? Let me tell you this real quick. Do you know that moment, like, because the actor was having to walk very slowly. Obviously, he's doing his acting and everything. He's going up to the throne, and they're not even cutting. They're letting him do the whole thing, which I think made it more powerful. They made the guy walk and limp, and he's all messed up, obviously, and everything else. He drops the crown on accident, or no, wait, it was the crown he dropped.
Yes,
he drops it on accident.
Yeah,
it wasn't supposed to happen for the show, and Damon Mickelson, as just a good dude, saw what happened and knew that he couldn't pick it up because he's having to hold the cane in one hand and his other arm's all wrapped up and stuff because he's supposed to be missing an arm. And so he knew he was going to have problems like lifting up the crown again for that scene. So he walks up in full regalia, he's already made up for the show, and hands the crown to him. And they were like, oh, brilliant. And made it a part of the show. That wasn't actually supposed to be part of the show. That was a Mickelson walking up and doing that. Yeah. And they were like, oh, crap, dude, that'd be really good. And yeah, dude, I thought that moment was really good. Like, it almost made Damon a good guy. You know what I'm saying? But we all still know he's bad. He makes shitty decisions.
I don't think Damon is entirely bad. I think he's made bad decisions.
No, yeah, dude.
But I think
you said it before. Gray area.
And I think that goes with all these characters. I think Alicent is a great character. I think Rhaenyra at some parts is a great character. I think she's very good. But what I was going to bring this all back to is Viserys. How this whole show, I think he is the good soul morally. I think he's very pure and good. Though he sometimes comes in situations politically that he should have handled better. However, he's trying to do it in the best way possible. And the best way possible, I think, is seen as being in the pure of heart. And whenever you see him just all torn up, mangled, and he looks like Phantom of the Opera and stuff, and it's at that point in the show, it's like everyone else around him have turned into monsters, while he is the one physically that looks like a monster, but internally he is like the spark of good. He is the spark of purity, and he is like this reflection on the idea that these characters, hopefully they can become as good as him. However, I don't think that's the case, and I think as the series goes on, I think he'll be a spark of influence from the calmness and especially the purity that he has of good. And you look at that dinner scene, right, when he's all around his family, he's like, I just want to see my family not arguing, not bickering. I'm just glad
you got to see that for a moment, which I thought was another beautifully cut scene.
That was one of the
where there for a moment. Yeah. Otto's clapping and laughing. The whole family's kind of laughing. There's people dancing together in the family. Like, he gets that moment. And I'm glad he had that moment right before he passed away, that he got to see what he wanted to see this whole time, whether it was fake or not, right? It ended abruptly after he left the table that night. But for one of the last things that he got to see was people actually being happy, and his family actually being happy. I thought that was like a really good decision and a really good way to tell a story.
Yeah, overall, I just thought this show was just remarkable on so many levels, and it was very Shakespearean at parts. And I love the symbolism and the metaphors, and the cinematography and directing was great. I don't know, man. Like, I thought Ryan Condal, George R. R. Martin, and Miguel Sapochnik, they're
working together pretty good on this.
But I know Miguel, he's not coming back for the next season because it was announced after the second episode aired.
Yep.
He wasn't. And
yep.
I think it makes me a little worried because I hope he comes back.
I'm not worried at all, because I heard an interview with George R. R. Martin that's like, yo, bro, I'm a big part of this.
With a lot of people.
No. He's just letting everybody know that unlike certain moments of like the original Game of Thrones, where he was a person that they knew they could go talk to, they could use it and not use it. where he's actually a bigger part of this, and he's even playing a huge part in what may be coming out next, which is a show about Jon Snow after the events of Game of Thrones.
I think
so. Like,
yeah.
So
if
George R. R.
Martin's
playing a big key factor in these new shows coming up. He's not just a guy that you can go talk to. He's a guy that they're actually making concerted efforts to run things by before they actually release it.
Yeah, and you look, and like I mentioned earlier in this review, like, and you can look it up too. The last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, Benioff and Weiss did not have George R. R. Martin consult with them. And that's why you get that criticism of, well, it feels a little rushed. Why are the episodes too little? And, the story is not as strong and all that kind of stuff. Even though I like the last 2 seasons. But, again.
Bro, I love, it ain't up there. I still think Battle of the Bastards is a better episode overall, but I love the Battle at Winterfell. I love that. I love the darkness, the bleakness, the all that stuff that's going on.
It's hard to see, and also where was the mention? What was the why didn't they send some army? I forget what it was.
I love Danny freaking blowing up King's Landing. I loved it personally. Me.
No, I like that
some
part.
People didn't like
I like
it,
that part too. I just wish it was a little longer. I wish I wish the Ice King and all them went to.
Well, I mean, but like, here's the thing. I don't think it was rushed because they didn't tell a good story. It was just rushed because you had half the episodes to work with. I mean, you literally had half the time. So to get things done, you had to rush things if they were going to get things done in that amount of episodes and that amount of time. But speaking of rushing, I said before we started this is going to be quick.
Russian.
And that maybe 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes. But I don't know if you noticed how long we've been going. It's like triple that. So like we've actually, but there was a lot of talk about this episode and as a season as a whole. But going out of there, I'm going to ask Brandi sitting next to me, like, because she is newer to the Game of Thrones. Like I said, right before this season started, she had just watched Game of Thrones, the original series, for the first time. She has watched this show with me and stuff. I just want to get a quick, what do you think about after watching Game of Thrones here pretty regularly recently? Like, what do you think about Game of Thrones as a whole?
Game of Thrones as a whole, it's very interesting. The relationships of people, like, now she's his niece and they're married, and now, like, I didn't quite understand it, but in Game of Thrones that was frowned upon, I guess, with that, because the twins that were together, the queen and Jamie.
Well, it's looked down upon.
But back in the day, it wasn't, I guess. So
no. So it was looked. So this is
Yeah.
Right. But with that being said, I can go ahead and clear that up. So, like, in the Game of Thrones world, the Targaryens are the people that do that. That's the family that does that. Nobody else likes it. Nobody else, like, if you're a Stark, you're not going to marry a brother and sister or nothing like that, or anybody in your family. They don't like it. Everybody else doesn't like it. It's just the Targaryen family. Now, in the original Game of Thrones, the Targaryens are pretty much wiped out, except for Danny and her brother at the very beginning of season 1, and he ends up dying. So she's the only one technically left, or all we know that's left, right? But it's looked down upon because, like, all the other houses doesn't agree with it. The Lannisters, which was the Jaime and Cersei during the original Game of Thrones, they're not supposed to be together because nobody else agrees with that. The only people that were kind of allowed to do it, or it was even looked at being okay, was the Targaryens.
Well, that kind of, I don't know. At first I was like, ew, and then I was like, okay, I get it, I guess. But all of that to get, like, the whole season that we watched, it was very interesting, and the ups and downs, and seeing the kids grow up, and, like, Alicent and Rhaenyra, like, growing up and becoming who they are, and the conflict that they were going to have. They were best friends, and then she married her dad, and then all this stuff, and then on a deathbed, the girl heard things wrong that she didn't know what was going on, and then all of this now coming into this war that's going to happen between them because she thinks the king wants his son to be the one when he was already the one to say, I want my daughter to be the queen in front of everybody, and then everybody's like, okay, this girl's lying because it was just them two in the room together. So you know, and then she's like, well, this is what he said, and I'm his wife, and you know, you have to take what I said. And now it's just like, bam, like now it's gonna be this whole big thing.
Hey man,
like
it's the perfect scenario of hearing what you want to hear. Because in the episode where Aegon is named king, in that carriage, he's saying the truth. Like, bro, like my dad ain't never cared about me because I was a fuck up. Like he's never cared. He's always said that she was going to be queen. He's never even mentioned, like he never even paid that much attention to me for me to be king. Like I'm screwing up all the time. Are you for real? Is this serious? Like he's actually speaking the truth. And Allison is a smart lady who knows the truth. She deep down knows that he was dying, that even if like she doesn't understand like that he was thinking that he was talking to his daughter, like even if she doesn't know that, even if she doesn't know like the whole like story that was foretold, the Song of Fire and Ice and everything else, even though she doesn't know anything about that, like she at least knows that he's dying, he's on milk of the poppy and whatever else, he's like not of his right mind, he's saying some crap that ain't good. Like she even knows that, but it's like what you want to hear is what you hear.
Seems like she was always jealous of her, of Rhaenyra.
Well, that always comes into play because
you
like
think Allison was
Allison was jealous.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know, like I think so. I mean, that's always going to happen though, because you got when you have areas where there's kings and queens and there's a family that's at the top and you're not at the top. There's always going to be some jealousy. Now, how you handle that is a totally different thing, right? Like, it's like, you know, when you're growing up and you got a friend that's got more money, like his family's got more money than you, and he's got the nice truck and you got a crap, you know, Pinto you're having to drive around in. We're all a little jealous, but that doesn't mean that we go and do bad things because we're a little jealous. Like that's the difference, right?
And
like
Allison's father is just feeding into her.
Yeah.
Of the
He is. Master puppets. You know.
Yeah, he's a puppet. Yeah, he's a puppet master. Like, you're gonna do this, and this is what you need to do, and like, yeah, he should have stayed gone. Like,
well, the thing about that though is like I said
earlier, conflict. I know you need a conflict in a show, and I understand that, and he's still an asshole.
Well, I mean, but here's the thing though. It's like I said earlier. What him trying to get his family better is no problem. There's nothing wrong with that innately. That's great for him to want his family to get a higher standing, to become part of the crown or something like that's fine. Like we want the best. We should want the best for our family. Is how he does it, how he goes about it. That's the only problem with it. Like if he did this a different way, like in a more honest way and everything else, then like it is what it is, right? But like it isn't that way because it wasn't done that way, and he's doing it kind of shady.
Yeah.
And talking about Master of Puppets, we got the. I wonder what that little shady Master of Feet's going to be doing come season 2.
That guy is something else.
Mr. Feet. Like... Hey, no, I'm just kidding. No, Lairs. Lairs is going to be. I think he's going to be a pivotal character for the next season.
Yep.
I don't know how long he's going to last, in terms of
and she lets him do it too.
That's the thing.
The thing is, she ain't got no choice. You want to win. Listen, the Game of Thrones is starting to be played. Like that's one of the things I was waiting for, is when the Game of Thrones starts to be played. It started getting played in the very first original Game of Thrones. Like that's why it was named that, because of the simple fact that it got played almost from the very beginning, right? As soon as that one dude dies, the dominoes start falling. I was wondering when it was going to start falling here, and now they're starting to fall now, and people are slowly but surely getting to the point of playing the game. And when you start playing the Game of Thrones, you ain't got no choice. You want to win, you better like whatever. You better do what you got to do to get the information, knowledge. This is the funny part. You were sitting in your school and your teacher was sitting there telling you like knowledge is power. And you were like, oh, what a big dork. Nobody thinks that. Now, when you really look into it, it's true. Knowledge is power. Knowing those secrets and the things that he knows and everything else, the information that he can do. If you need an assassin to go and take somebody out to get you what you need to do, like that's needed.
What it is.
She has the upper hand right now because she has a guy like that.
It's dead animal dies and vultures are going to surround that animal, but it's all about how is that vulture going to get that animal. How are they? That's what the Game of Thrones is. How do you get to your goals?
And I hate that they get rid of my favorite people. Like the Game of Thrones, I really liked Ned Stark, and then he was dead, and I
Oh
really
no,
liked
that's
this
also
kid,
part of the
and
game.
then boom, he's dead. I'm like, come on, like, and the people that I want dead aren't dead yet, and it's like, come on, give me something to be happy about for a minute. Just
Yeah.
That's how Game of Thrones is, though. Like,
no, I don't
And what's
like
also really great too is the fact that you know, again, like I mentioned, the gray area is that you have these characters who are like not entirely bad, but you're like, man, can you just not be an asshole in this scene? But
Yeah.
it just be good. It just be
I
good,
love it though. I
you know?
love the
But
fact.
I,
Look,
no, I love it. I love it
yeah,
too.
I love the fact that you have the people that you're rooting for, and then you have the biggest assholes across from them. Because guess what? It makes you root for those people even harder. Game of Thrones is one of the only series of anything that I watch where I openly don't cheer for the bad guys. I love Darth Vader. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love all, like, Megatron and everything else. Of all this stuff that I've watched throughout history, I love the bad guys. They're more interesting. They're cooler. Everything else.
You
Like,
cheer for Darth
No
Vader?
Country for Old Men. I'm cheering for the dude that's like, don't say a whole lot, but when he says it's important, he's out there killing folks and shit. Like, I like that guy. Like, I'm you know what I'm saying? Like, because their characters are usually more interesting. They have a cooler story to tell, everything else. But like in this show, the only, like, in Game of Thrones as a whole, even in the original Game of Thrones, is one of the few times where I was actually openly rooting for the good guys, because the bad guys are written so well. They're so bad, I can't even make excuses for them, right? Like in No Country for Old Men, I can make excuse that's that guy's job. You know what I'm saying? Like, but he is honorable in what he's doing. Or like Darth Vader, I could say they brought peace to the galaxy, because for almost 30 years, there wasn't all this rebellion or fighting or whatever. They did bring peace to the galaxy in kind of a weird way, however you want to look at it, right? There's arguments to where I can say there are certain things to like where I could be like, hey, this is why you should like this character more or whatnot. In Game of Thrones, I can't. You know, there's no thing I can say that makes Theon a better person. Like, he's a piece of shit, garbage. I can't even come up with some reason to root for that dude. Like, even though some people started rooting for him because of the story arc and stuff he went on, but like the boy from the Flayed Men, the big part of the Battle of the Bastards, whatnot, Bolton,
Ramsay.
the Bolton kid, Bruce Bolton's kid, like him. Like, bro, he's so hated. Like, there's no way that you could say, yo, guy, he's a no, man. I can't.
What about Jamie Lannister?
Jamie Lannister is a little bit different because, like, man, he's like this punk kid that kind of learned a lesson. Like, no, but he's a punk kid that learned a lesson a hard way. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe Daemon could be a little bit like Jamie.
No.
In some way.
Damon's more from Daemon. You know what you're gonna get. Like, and I think that's gonna be Daemon. Like, Daemon's downfall.
Because he pushed Brandon.
Yeah, but he didn't do it because he wanted to. There's a difference there. Like, Damon's decisions is all up to this point been because he wanted to. Jamie Lannister did things because of his sister.
Well,
like if he didn't do that, like him and his sister would have been done with at that point. And because of that's why he said the words, things you do for love. He would not have ever done that to that kid if he would have just been up there. If Jamie Lannister would have just been up there in a tower, maybe even talking to somebody else about maybe something that's a little secretive, he wouldn't have pushed a kid out of a room. He did that because of
I think Daemon is Jamie because, of course, the ancestral thing. But I think Daemon is a lot more smarter than Jamie. I think he's a lot more strategized.
Yeah, but he's more brash. Like, here's the problem.
But he's more brash.
Damon's downfall is because he's going to go in there like a missile and he's going to get blown up himself before he ever does.
He's intelligent about it. He's intelligent about it. You know,
I don't know, man.
But like I mentioned,
no, it's not intelligent whenever he goes up in that first, in the first battle.
Smarter than Jamie, though. Smarter than Jamie.
I don't know. I mean, Jamie's got strategy. Like,
I haven't watched Game of Thrones in a while.
Well, if anybody said anything about Cersei, Jamie would go and do shit too. Just like
no, that's the part that he was stupid. That was his weakness.
Daemon, that guy called Rhaenyra a whore, basically. That's bastards, and he chopped the head off. So
that's part of the thing. Like you're right about that. His weakness is Cersei. Without Cersei there, he's more smart. He thinks about things.
There's a lot.
Like, he doesn't do whatever, right?
There's a lot of similarities.
He gets himself in trouble because of Cersei.
But Daemon's also kind of like that.
Daemon's reckless, though. Daemon's running across a beach and should have died in one of the first episodes in this season because he does things, like I said, he's like a heat-seeking missile. Once he gets something in his head, he wants to get it done, and he does something. But that's going to cause his demise. He will die. because he tries to do that beach scene again, but this time he gets killed. You know, that's what's going to happen. I'm telling you, like, it's almost foreshadowing. That's how Damon's going to die. I don't know nothing about Fire and Blood. I don't know what happens to Damon, but I can tell you this: he will not survive the whole thing. Damon will die in this series for
well,
that.
he's going to, because they'll all die anyway.
Pulling out your sword every time when someone makes a crack or a comment is not. You're not going to keep. That's not going to be the best way every time, and that's what he ends up choosing almost every time. Every chance he gets, he was wanting to, you know, kill someone or attack them. That's not the thing to do every time.
But again, yeah, he is very, you know, like I mentioned earlier in the review, like, he is very abrasive and he is aggressive and whatnot. And but, you know, Rhaenyra does have kind of like a head on his shoulders, where she's kind of, you know, making sure he thinks about what he's doing, and he takes a couple steps back, of course. And I think there's a little bit of similarities between Jaime and Cersei with Rhaenyra and Daemon.
Well, we got off on a tangent.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get. We almost got off sidetracked, because to a certain point, we are keeping at least a little bit related to the House of Dragons. But
no pun intended.
Go ahead.
I said no pun intended.
I just said, yeah, I'm trying. Like, but you asked me how I thought, and this is what I kind of see a little bit. You know.
No, yeah.
Yes, he's brass, and he goes out, but he also will protect his wife and want to do shit, you know, just like Jaime did, and for Cersei, like, he'll do anything for them now at this point. Yes, you know, he's more aggressive, like where he kind of choked his wife for a second, and
Jaime did the same thing to Cersei in that funeral scene for one of their kids, you know, there in the original Game of Thrones. The biggest thing is this. The biggest thing is this.
I remember that now, yeah.
The biggest thing is this, like I said, with Daemon, okay, is, yeah, dude, you're going out there, you're doing your thing. But there's going to be somebody like a Laura Strong that's sitting back in the back that sees that every point in time you get Daemon this way, he does this, all right? After you do that every time, the person that's sitting back and being more, like, chill is going to be like, okay, so how do we get him? They will set something up. He's going to fall for the trap because he's going to go in headlong like he does every time, and he's going to die because they're going to have it set up. It's not always the best decision to clap back or to yell back or to go after someone back. A lot of times it's way more intelligent to sit back and let things play out on their own, because, like, it not to make those brass decisions. Like, he was, if it would have been him and she wouldn't have been there, he would have killed Otto right there. Now in this whole scenario, as far as Westeros goes, it wasn't her that's starting a war. As far as Westeros, the whole land.
Oh yeah.
Like, right now, who looks like the aggressors? The Greens.
Yeah.
The Blacks have done nothing but sit back. You know what I'm saying? And now when they actually do the attack, because Luke got killed and because the Greens killed Luke, whether it was accidental or whatever, they don't know that. All they know is now Luke's dead. Guess what? Now when the Blacks do their moves, now when the Blacks do everything they're going to do. But if Daemon was allowed to kill Otto right there, guess who now looks like the bad guys? Guess who now looks like the aggressors and started this whole thing? Nothing can be blamed on the Blacks now, because now the thing that's going to always be brought up is, like, they killed my son, they killed Luke. That's what I'm talking about. Not all the time is it good to pull out your sword and cut someone's head off, right? And in some cases it is, like I think that they did with Corlys's brother when he did what he did. I think that was called for, and I don't think that was a bad move. There's not a lot of consequences going to come from that. But if you would have did that to the wrong person, there's a lot of bad things that happens.
I think it feels like internally, the Greens have kind of done a lot of, like, incidental damage outside of, like,
they're more slimy. Otto's taking advantage of the king being in a bad health. What's her face is showing feet. Okay, I mean, they're the slimy character. You know what I'm saying?
They're showing feet.
Like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're the slimy characters of the two, the Greens and the Blacks, right? Like, it's like, I can't come up with something, but I'm just going to use this. Adelia is probably going to want to cut this out, but it's like two guys, right? They're going to go. They're going to watch porn, right?
Jesus, no.
You know what I'm saying? they're both in a lot of people's eyes doing a bad thing, right? Like not doing a super great thing. They're both going to do something you want to keep behind the scenes. And they both, but as they're going to the room, the one guy, he's at least trying to look presentable when he goes into the room, to watch his porn. You know what I'm saying? He looks presentable. He's trying to be like he's respectful as he does it and does as much gentleman things that you can do as you're going to do that. And then there's the other guy that's got the whole like box of Vaseline under one arm. He's got whatever. He's got things in a bag over here that you've never seen before in your whole life and everything else. And he's going into to do the same thing. But it's like, bro, you doing it sleazy, right? The blacks are doing bad things in some cases. They're not doing the right thing all the time, but they look more presentable while doing it. That's my analogy. They're looking like when you see them, you don't go, oh, that's a sleazeball. Even though they're doing sleazeball things, you don't look at them and go, oh, damn, dog. They're scum of the earth. But the greens, on the other hand, because of how they're doing things, like behind the scenes in the shadows, behind everyone's back, they look like, you know what I'm saying? They're the guy that you can point out and be like, bro, I know what he's going to do. Yeah, it's nasty. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're the ones that look bad. They look slimy, man. Like, nobody wants to put slime in their hands or feel it, or anything like that, right? Like, so there we go.
You could also say it's like two people going and getting a job, like trying to apply for a job. And like one person looks very presentable, but they're not as always intelligent when doing the stuff. They get applied, right? So they get the job, they're doing the thing, but they're not always, doing things on task and getting.
I like your analogy.
But then the other one, but the other person looks a little weird. The other person doesn't look as presentable, doesn't look as great. But
no, man, one dude's wearing a suit and tie, and the other guy's coming in with like holes in his shorts,
long hair.
He's wearing he's like what you used to have. On. Yeah, he's wearing like a tank top or whatever, or a wife beater, maybe with some chew tobacco stains on, like most people in West Virginia, and like how they look out like. And they're trying to go in and get the job. And you got the other guy with shirt and ties and everything else. You know what I'm saying? But
surprise, Alabama's not much different.
We've got to stop. We can talk about this afterwards, bro. We'd almost been going for 2 hours now. And like I said before we even started, we was going to go 30 minutes. We've been talking about all kinds of shit. But that being said, last question. It's Halloween time. What are you more afraid of? Michael Myers in his mask or this? Which one, Alex?
Should I
Michael Myers or this?
Should I have watched the last 2 episodes of Halloween Kills and Ends?
I don't know. I'm just saying, man.
I'm pretty scared of Rhaenyra, honestly. I'm really scared.
When you see that right there,
yeah.
There's no fucks given. Those are eyeballs right there. This done said no fucks given. People's gonna burn. People will die.
Those are the eyes John Wick gave to those Russians
when they saw his puppy dead on the floor.
Yeah,
like it was done, son. That was those. Look at that, dude. If you see those eyes, that's the last thing you see. It's kind of like the movie Ring. You know what I'm saying? Like if you see that little movie or whatever, you did. But it is what it is, right? Yeah. But man, we've been talking for way too long, but it's been fun, and it's been fun doing this with you, Alex and Brandi, for chilling with us and everything else. But let's get out of here, man. And until next time. Peace.
Dracarys.